He is basically a lap dog in a horse disguise. We just spend time together, hanging out, having fun, playing games. He was born in Alberta. He ended up at an auction where he was purchased by a rescue. So when I adopted Rudnick from the rescue, he'd gone through a lot of trauma in a very short period in his life. I first saw Rudnick when I went with a couple of friends to a horse rescue, and I saw this like little mangy kind of black colt off in the distance. He wouldn't come near us, and something about him kind of just stuck out. He looked like he'd been through some stuff. Like he hadn't had an easy start, but something in his eyes, there was like this softness in there that just was like so desperate to love someone. He was only 11 months old when I got him. It was very mistrusting of people, but he'd had like lice, he'd had hair falling off, there were burrs in his mane and his tail. I wanted to be able to get all these burrs out of his fur. I wanted to be able to rehabilitate him properly. But because he was untouchable, it was really hard to do any of that. I couldn't get near him, he'd run away. I couldn't touch him, again, he'd run away. So it would be hours of me just sitting there with treats in my hand, trying to find some way to like get him to want to investigate me, and letting him figure me out, letting him realize I'm not gonna hurt him, I'm not gonna do anything mean. I'm just here to make sure he's happy, healthy, and I only have the best intention for him. And anytime he'd come up to me, I'd like touch his nose, give him a pet. I'd have to approach him with treats and very cautiously, because he would turn around and take off the second I got too close or he felt uncomfortable. It was a lot of just sitting there with treats, trying to get him to like feel comfortable enough around me to actually come near me. And once we got past the initial part of having to get used to him being handled and being touched, it took about a year and a half of working with him consistently to get him to the point where he was comfortable having a rider on him, and he was confident and he wasn't scared. So now he's a completely different horse. Riding is a very small part of what we do together. And so a lot of the time we'll actually just hang out in the pasture and just play games. There's so many times I'll be in the barn, and if I'm taking too long for his liking because he wants a treat, he'll actually like shove the barn door shut, lock me inside. Sometimes he'll even open it back up and then look at me like I didn't do anything. He has such a loving and affectionate, playful personality. It's taken this long for that to really come out, and now he gives kisses, he gives hugs when he wants to. He doesn't always want to. And that's when I find that our bond gets stronger, when we're spending that time playing together and building that trust. I would say Rudnick is probably one of the largest parts of my life. He's the hopes that I've always had through my life. So because he had all this PTSD and trauma from the first few months of his life, I had actually gone through quite a bit of emotional, mental, physical turmoil the last year before I adopted him because of the toxic relationship I ended up being in. And so when I finally got free of that relationship and started my life over, that I didn't trust anyone either. I had a lot of open wounds still that I was really trying to heal, and it wasn't until I found Rudnick, he started healing the parts of me that I couldn't. He was teaching me how to trust again. He was showing me that it doesn't matter what you've been through. The worst parts of his life, that were literally all his life, had been at that point, and he was still willing to try and build that trust back up. And so I think as I was working on showing him he could trust me, he was showing me that I could trust again and I could open up that part of myself again. Something I didn't even notice at the time, but as I was working to heal him, he was working to heal me. And at the end of the day, we ended up becoming much better versions of ourselves through it all.